Hi everyone, welcome to Membership Voice. I'm Kero O'Shea, the coordinator of The Voice and the host for this evening's webinar. A very special welcome to our special guest, Hamish Jones. Welcome Hamish, a passionate Rotarian who's doing a lot, and skilled technologist who's doing a lot to help reposition Rotary for a brighter future. Hamish, how are you, mate?
I'm awesome. Thank you for the invite and hello everybody and thank you for jumping on to listen to what I have to say this evening.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. Just a little bit of housekeeping, but first things first, and I would like to do the acknowledgement of country because it's important for me at this stage to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm hosting tonight's webinar. I acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture and offer my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Now, I'm quite excited to formally introduce Hamish. He's got some quite remarkable credentials on both fronts here. Hamish is an experienced business owner. He's a technology consultant with more than 20 years of experience, specialising in telecommunications, digital transformation, AI integration, and the works. And as a passionate Rotarian, so the other side of the equation, Hamish dedicates his time to community building and improving the operational efficiency of Rotary clubs through innovative solutions. So that's a big one for us. And he serves as the public image chair for District 9790, past president of the Rotary Club of Strathmore. His mission is to help clubs leverage modern technologies such as AI to boost productivity, streamline administrative tasks, and maximise community impact. Over to you, please, Hamish.
Thank you, Kero. And again, great to see everyone here this evening. So this webinar sort of came out the back of the Fit for Purpose program. I'm not sure how many on the screen were at the Fit for Purpose program. Obviously, it was a great program, a lot of information. I did stay for the whole 2 days and make a lot of notes myself, even though I was officially there as one of the speakers. You may remember I gave a fairly broad presentation that day, covering a number of different possibilities for how AI may be used by a club and some of the topics that could be covered, given I didn't know what would most be of interest to Rotarians. 99% of the questions I had after the fact were about using AI tools to help streamline club administration, specifically for secretaries to help with streamlining the process of taking minutes and then sharing that information amongst club members. So what I wanted to do this evening is really do a quick deep dive into showing how that might actually look and how that process might actually work. So from a meeting recording through to actually how those minutes might come out after using a couple of tools, first to transcribe the meeting and then to use ChatGPT to actually format the minutes. So just a bit of background on how we ended up where we are today. A few Rotarians were nice enough to jump on with me to create we basically did a mock committee meeting because we thought the best way to do it would be, we didn't want to share any particular club's private information if it wasn't ready to go out public yet. So we just actually used ChatGPT to draft a script for this committee meeting. So I used it all through the aspect, but we recorded that meeting, and I'm going to use that to show you here as an example of what a committee meeting audio file might look like and what it goes there. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and then I'm just going to talk through the process. And if we could leave any questions to the end, that might make things easier, unless it's something particularly technical that's got you really confused, and we could keep it really short then. If it's something more in depth, let's leave it to the end. But if it's of technical nature, please let me know, just in case you're not understanding something that I'm saying. So just going to share my screen first. So hopefully you can see a blank Word document there. Now I'm using Microsoft Word on the web because I have a Apple Mac computer. I use a MacBook Air, and the Office program that's native to the desktop doesn't actually have the transcription option. If you're using a Windows computer, you should have that transcription option natively. If you're not using a Windows computer, you can still log into with your Office 365 license. You can log in and use the web to do this as well. So we're working from the assumption that you've already recorded your meeting and uploaded it to your computer. We can go through some of the technicalities of that at the end if you need to, but I'm just going to show you the process of what we go through. So in Microsoft Word, you've got this little microphone at the top right of the screen there that gives you, if you look at the drop down menu, it gives you the option for transcribe, and you can see I've got it open there already. So then just change it to UK English, because that's just obviously we want it to spell correctly. Australian English, upload audio. So obviously this depends on where you've saved the file, but I know where I've saved it on my computer, so I'm just gonna find it. This one. And you can see it's got a little how quickly it's uploading and transcribing the file there. It's got the little blue icon going across the screen there fairly quickly. As I say, it's going quickly. It starts to slow down. And there you can see how quickly it's transcribed the meeting minutes. Now, bear in mind that this was a very short example of a committee meeting. I think our meeting only went for about 8 minutes, so we could use an example to show here. Now, obviously, normally a committee meeting will be a bit longer, so that transcription won't perhaps happen quite as quickly as it's happened there, but it'll still be relatively quick and usually a lot quicker than if you were doing it yourself or writing up your notes normally. Then the next step from here, for me, I would use a prompt for ChatGPT, and I'll just show you a simple prompt that you can start with just to show you how simple it can be. So I've got the prompt. You should be able to see my ChatGPT window now, and the prompt I'm just going to say, please turn this audio transcript into easily digestible meeting minutes for our Rotary Club. And then I'm literally just going to copy and paste all of this text from here. And hit enter, and now it's thinking. And you can see it's copying and pasting that very quickly. And then I'll copy and paste that into a Word document just so you can see what it looks like. And there you have your minutes of your meeting already created from the recording. Now, a few words of caution there. You would need to check to make sure it is actually an accurate reflection. So it doesn't necessarily preclude taking any notes whilst you're running the meeting. You want to verify for accuracy and, in terms of figures, in terms of names, you want to make sure that the recording has picked up and the transcription's picked up everything properly. But as you can see, what would normally take hours has taken literal minutes to at least get you to that first draft done. And from there, you can, read through it, check and verify it, and then distribute it to the rest of the committee to make sure they're okay with it. So that was the sort of starting point of where I wanted to show you how quickly that was, because that was one of the questions. That was one of the main questions I got at the presentation up there in Sydney at the Fit for Purpose. And I just wanted to show some simple tools that could be used as a starting point. You can record your meetings in various ways. Some clubs are already doing their committee meetings on Zoom or another similar platform like Teams or Google Meet, and they obviously offer you that recording functionality. If your committee meeting is in a quiet enough room, you can record it on a mobile handset. All the latest smartphones these days have fairly good quality microphones and fairly good quality listening there, but that obviously does come with some issues in terms of, you do need to make sure it's quiet so it's not picking up background noise. Assuming it is a quiet enough room, that should be good enough. Then from there, the question becomes, well, if it's not quite good enough, investing in some recording hardware these days is not that expensive. You can get something, for a couple of $100 max. And I'd sort of make the argument that, this is actually an important part of club administration and something that could be invested in without it being too much of a hassle, because I think there's a lot of burden that gets placed on club secretaries that doesn't necessarily need to be placed there. And investing in that, if you can save them a lot of time, means that they can actually get more out of their own Rotary experience by spending more time on service projects. And as was discussed at the Fit for Purpose event that a lot of us went to, that a focus on service projects is something that I think we all need to look at to become a more engaging organisation for not just ourselves, but those that are looking to join, because no one joins Rotary to take meeting minutes. I'm going to stop sharing now. I know that was very quick, but we can go into more detailed stuff. I just wanted to sort of keep this open and take more questions from the floor and make this more interactive than my presentation was in Sydney. So it can be questions about the taking of minutes. It can be questions about what could be done next. Any burning question you've got in something completely different related to AI. I'm happy to spend the next sort of 20 minutes to half an hour. I just wanted to spend that first sort of 10 to 15 minutes showing you how quickly that can be done so that you can see for yourself. I'll put it out there. I'm happy to meet with any club as well. Obviously, I'm Melbourne based, so it's probably going to be via Zoom, depending on where you are in the country, to run through this more specifically for your club and any other questions you may have. But yeah, I want to open it for questions now.
Okay. So do we have any questions from the floor? Remember, electronic hand up, please. Failing that, put something in the chat. I just happen to have just bear with me a moment. A question, Hamish, learning and development. There's some pretty crucial changes happening there in terms of having a regional development program for club leaders and presidents-elect. Is there anything happening with that group in terms of leadership in the AI space? Because having practitioners who want to use AI is one thing, it's going to be great, but if club leadership's not really across the issue, it might be a bit of a dampener.
I can speak to that at a couple of levels. I know that in our own district, I've educated our own district governor, and he's got very excited about using ChatGPT for a number of different things. And we're working on ideas for all clubs, but also he's connected me with a lot of clubs that have had that interest. So it's been, ad hoc's not the right way. It's sort of been the same thing for each club and sometimes for clusters. So we've been doing stuff in District 9790 from a more global perspective. I know that at the last global convention, there was some presentations on AI. So it is starting to be talked about and recognized, not just at an Australian level, but at an international level. Whether it's made it into the formal learning and development and whether any of those courses are being developed, I couldn't tell you. I'm happy to stick my hand up and offer to help if anyone from the head office at Evanston happens to come across this when the recording comes out. But at this stage, I couldn't tell you. I can confidently assume that it is coming. Where it is in terms of the development, I'm not 100% sure yet.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. We have a quick question here from District Governor-elect Veronica from Western Australia. Over to you, please, Veronica.
What exactly is the program called?
The programs that I used in terms
the one
of
that you've just used.
Okay, so our meeting was recorded in Zoom, but you can record your meeting in any sort of audio format and on any recording device. So like I said, if you do your meetings remotely, whatever platform you use, whether it's Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Google Meet, does have a recording functionality. Yep. So you can record it there. And then it was first uploaded into Microsoft Office, so Microsoft Word, which does have as part of their audio dictation, actually has a transcription option. So that initial transcription was actually just in Microsoft. I used it on the web because my Mac computer means that the actual desktop version of Microsoft is not quite not quite the same as the Windows version, but Microsoft Word is where the transcription happened. And then the meeting minutes, as an extra step, I used ChatGPT, which is the most common AI tool that people have heard of and started experimenting with to turn that transcription into the meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Veronica and Hamish. Over to Judy Ford.
Thank you very much, Hamish. That's been fantastic, and I'm really excited about using it. With the prompt, I tried to quickly write down what you'd written, but it went too fast for me.
I'll copy and paste it into the chat. That's fine.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. But are there any special words you need to put into the prompt to get the best out of the recording?
No, that was definitely going to be part of the discussion, and I'm glad we got to that. So that's good. I just wanted to do a simple prompt at first, just to show how you don't necessarily need to be particularly detailed with how you prompt an AI, because with ChatGPT, it's what's called a conversational language learning tool. So, if you're not quite happy with what you get the first time around, you can actually literally just keep having a conversation saying, no, I didn't quite like that. Please add this, please do that, until you get the format you want. Having said that, the initial prompt I've just put in the chat now. So it was, please turn this audio transcript into easily digestible meeting minutes for our club. Now, I know a lot of clubs have their own format for meeting minutes, so you can be more specific in how you want the output. Some clubs like to have, action items at the end as a separate thing. If you have action items, you can tell it that you want to have action items. It can do all these things, and the more times you use transcription, the more times you do it, it actually learns from the information you're putting in, because it's the same account, and each time you sort of prompt it and tell it you want it a different way, it'll get better at giving you the output you want the first time. So, I mean, look, you can start with, so I've copied one potential prompt in there for everybody to see. I've actually drafted potentially a more detailed one that you might want to start with, but I just wanted to show that you got relatively good output with a simple prompt. So, but if you want to start with something more detailed and tailor it to your own club, there's another one I've just pasted in there as well, which might give you a different starting point. But like I said, it's a conversation, so don't get sort of too bogged down in what you say in the first place. Just tell it you want meeting minutes, and it will give you meeting minutes. And then if you want to change the way the meeting minutes are done, tell it what you want changed, and it will end up. The first couple of times you do it, it may not be a big saving of time on what you would normally do doing the minutes yourself. But as you can see from the presentation, then in less than 10 minutes, we got from a meeting that was recorded to something that most clubs would probably be moderately happy with, and I can almost guarantee that some clubs would just put it out like that without even checking it through it. I'm not necessarily advocating that you should just put it out without checking through it, but it's got to a format where for a lot of organisations, and not just Rotary clubs, and a lot of community groups would be happy with the output already in a significantly shorter amount of time.
Thanks, Hamish, and thanks, Judy. Amanda Watkin, your question, please.
Thank you very much indeed. And Hamish, really appreciate it. Calling you here from the United Kingdom and Ireland. So we're obviously doing a lot of work, the same as Zone 8 is, in terms of modernisation and making life easier. So one question I have for you, please, is in regard to the AI companion within Zoom. And I actually saw someone had switched that transcript on earlier. Do you have any sort of working experience of using that tool and the differences between the AI companion versus taking transcription, uploading into Word, and then bringing it back down into ChatGPT, please?
I'm mindful that not everybody's paying for I didn't necessarily focus on the AI assistant in Zoom, because not everybody has a paid Zoom account. A lot of people will still use the free one, so to try and keep the meeting under 40 minutes, so you don't get the full functionality of that. It is a great tool. It has a lot of functionality in it itself. So if people want to explore that and they do have that paid account, they do have the paid license, there is a lot of stuff there that can be done. Like, you can summarize things. It's not necessarily going to format it in meeting minutes in the same way that using ChatGPT would, because it's not that same sort of conversational language model, but it can transcribe and summarize. So if that's your preference, you can get the summary from there and then format it in your own way. It really becomes a personal preference for clubs there. So I was going to mention a couple of different tools if people didn't want to use Microsoft or that. There's that one, there's Otter AI, there's Descript, there's different tools for those that aren't using Zoom. So if you've got it, and if it's an option in your meeting, try it around. I just wanted to show one example tonight that was more in depth to show how much time can be saved, and then it's more encouraging clubs to explore that and see which one works for them. I know that didn't really answer your question, but other than saying yes, it can do 99% of it, and then it comes down to which the preference of particular clubs and which one they want to use themselves.
It did answer the question, Hamish, so thank you. It
Okay,
is a different, it does do a different thing, which is fantastic. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Amanda, and thanks, Hamish. Now it's over to past Governor Rick McDonald. You just need to turn your microphone on.
There we go. Microphone's on. Look, I appreciate it. Thanks, Hamish. I really, really appreciate you putting this time and effort into assisting us with ChatGPT. I'm not a ChatGPT orphan, but believe it or not, I had not considered using it for producing minutes. So thank you very much for that. But I would also like to say that there are a lot of other technology advancements that are available to Rotary clubs to speed up and improve the processes that we are currently lumbered by. And one of the ones that we have done within our club is use a Google form and a Google sheet to produce our attendance records each week. And so
Absolutely.
apologies and guests are loaded via a form. And on the night before the meeting, the commissariat simply prints that form out that shows the guests, the apologies, and the members ready to tick off on the night. And they can ring the venue and say there's so many members, so many people coming tonight. Bingo, that's perfect. It's easy. There's no phone calls. Joe Blow, would you please apologise for me? Which gobbles up a huge amount of time for those that are managing that process to a very simple process. It's quick and easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And if clubs haven't already clubs districts haven't already investigated, I would absolutely suggest you reach out to, I think it's Connecting Up is the organisation off the top of my head, that offer free licenses for Microsoft Office and Google, if that's your preferences, for some of these cloud-based tools. You can do similarly. Microsoft Office has a forms thing as well where you can create forms, and it was going to be something that I hoped we got to mention, and I'll bring it up now because it seems like a good segue. Another use, I encourage people to start with minutes because it's obviously was one that was popular at the recent conference, but also it is a burden on clubs that I think if they can be moved on, it gives people a lot of time. But you could ask ChatGPT to create a survey for you, which is make your membership engagement to make sure your club members are happy. Ask it to come up with the questions if you can't think of the questions yourself, and then even community needs assessment. Ask it to come up with a list of questions. Use your Google Forms or your Microsoft Office forms as the platform to deliver that, and then it all comes out in an easily digestible spreadsheet, the answers. And if you can't analyze that yourself, you can again upload that data to ChatGPT to get it to analyze and find trends and all sorts of things. So it is a very sort of circular thing of using and integrating these tools. And yeah, absolutely. Obviously tonight's focus was on AI, but thanks for bringing that up because there are a lot of other tools out there that I encourage clubs to explore, and start with Connecting Up to see if you can get a free license for it for your club, because then it becomes the club's property as opposed to an individual member using their own accounts, which can have its own issues later on if someone leaves or whatever. At least if it's in the club name, the secretary can continue to look after it, or your IT person, whoever you decide to have in control of that, just so it becomes a resource of the club going forward.
Thanks, Hamish, and thanks, Rick. Connecting Up is a marvellous resource and it comes highly recommended. Ross Marshall, over to you for your question, please.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's probably been half answered by the previous two questioners, but Hamish, apart from expediting minutes and agendas and drafting letters, do you see AI playing any other major roles in pub matters such as accounts and things like that? We hear a lot about it, of how good it is and how dangerous it is, apparently. Or potentially, but can you see it playing a major role in anything else but apart from clerical situations?
Good question. And I did actually create a list of the next 5 things that I'd suggest clubs try after the sort of admin stuff. It's not yet good at maths, and I wouldn't necessarily trust it with the accounting, although I know bookkeeping tools like Xero and things like that are starting to integrate some sort of AI stuff and more automation than AI. So the Treasurer should definitely look at some of these tools, but not necessarily ChatGPT as an option there.
I have heard that AI is the first people that's going to take over as lawyers and accountants, which is probably a good thing. But
look, one of the big risks you have with AI, and I did mention it already, but I will mention it again, is AI, it's funny. It wants to be really nice to you and it wants to be really helpful, but it has a propensity to make mistakes sometimes and sometimes still, and they can be some fairly serious mistakes in terms of trying to expedite and give you what you want. Like, it's happening less and less, but there's history of it. Just like, for example, the lawyer example, there's history of it making up case precedents for cases that didn't even exist, and then there were media articles about lawyers getting in trouble because they used ChatGPT to try and prepare documentation that just had fake cases in it. So yes, eventually it may, and yes, there are examples of it passing law tests like the American bar and knowing the answers to all those things. So absolutely, it's as intelligent as some lawyers that are out there. I would argue from a professional perspective and a professional standpoint in that way that AI is not going to replace the lawyer or the accountant. The lawyer or accountant that uses AI effectively is going to replace the lawyer or accountant that doesn't, because they're going to be able to do their job more effectively, efficiently, give better advice in less time. So they can, one, take on more clients, but also the people that are paying them will probably get that advice in less hours, because they're obviously both ones that normally charge by the hour. So I think that's, from an efficiency perspective, they will start to use it, and if they don't, they'll fall behind. In terms of a Rotary Club and using it now, I'm going to copy the 5 into the chat based on Di's question there in the chat, and then talk to each of them. Content is one that I think clubs should start using now. If you've got a template email that you send out more than once, whether it's a welcome pack to new members or an information pack to prospective members, find out what you've got and see if there's some suggestions that ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude or Gemini, which is the Google one. There's a number of tools. I'm going to use ChatGPT when I talk, only because it's the main one that I use myself. But if you've got that already, ask it if it can be improved. If you haven't got something formal and your club is sort of manually doing it each time, get it created and get it saved as a template, because it'll save a lot of time there as another admin task that can be done. And usually by asking for help with drafting, it'll add things that you perhaps haven't thought about, or you may not have thought about. And again, like I said, it's conversational. You might get your first draft and then say, is there anything you think we might miss? Is there any way we might improve this, that kind of thing. And it'll give you suggestions of stuff that you might add. You might add some context for your own club. It's different and personal to your club. Obviously, meeting days and things like that you'll need to add in and get yourself, but just to sort of formalize a lot of your content there, it can help you draft newsletters. And again, the next extension from creating the meeting minutes might be, okay, here's the meeting minutes, now reformulate that as a newsletter so our club members know some of the decisions that were made as a club, because they don't necessarily want to read the minutes, they just want the key dot points from that. So summarizing the summary and saying, we had our committee meeting and we've decided we're doing this barbecue on this date, this service project here, and donating X money to whatever program. The next one there is event planning and coordination. And I'm not just talking about on a day, I'm talking about creating a full event planning checklist from months out and making sure you've got all your insurances, all your dotted all your I's, crossed all your T's, and coordination checklists that can give you different roles that you might need on the day. And you could put in any event, and chances are it's got all the world's data at its fingertips now, ChatGPT, because it can search the internet. You could say, I want to run this event on this date, please give me an event planning checklist from 3 months out to a month afterwards, including everything. And I say a month afterwards because you might be doing your follow-up thank yous to volunteers, your follow-up thank yous to sponsors, your post-event marketing, all those sorts of things. It will actually give you a timeline and a calendar of events to do all that for you. And instead of sitting around and thinking about it and brainstorming it in a meeting that may take up to an hour or more, you can have that document as a first draft in a couple of minutes, and then add it and change it to suit your actual thing. So it's not taking over, but it's just making everything more efficient. Social media management and content drafts. That, like when I say social media management, I use the example of a Rotary event that a club's putting on. I hope I'm not insulting anyone here, and it's a conversation I've had in my own district and use some of my own clubs as examples. But clubs are very good at taking photos of an event after the fact and saying, look at this great event we had, all the people that were here, and how much money we raised, or how many trees were planted, or whatever the event is. And then I have the conversation like, well, how did you promote this beforehand? Oh yeah, no, we sent it out to the people we normally send it to. And I'm like, well, did you tell people on social media about it? Did you do any of that sort of stuff? And no. So a social media plan might be a plan that starts a month before the event with the types of posts you should talk about, from a save the date through to creating an event on Facebook, 3 or 4 different posts at different times, just reminding people to come along, what you should post on the day, and then what you should post in the follow-up. Again, thanking the sponsors, thanking everyone that turned up, and still doing that exciting after the fact thing. But at least if you start promoting it more in advance, it can help there. A lot of clubs struggle with what they should put on social media. And look, that's understandable. There's a lot of stuff that's happening there. So, you could say, what should I put in for a 30-day social media calendar? And, some of the stuff it'll come up with, you'll think, well, that's not our club, that's irrelevant. But, it'll give you ideas like, meet the member, why you should join, history of Rotary, all sorts of things that you can then draft from there. Pick the ones you like. If you're not sure what to actually write, ask it to draft a post for you as the next step. And from there, you can, don't necessarily use exactly what it's coming out there, but it'll give you some ideas of the type of text you can use. It's getting better. And I know a lot of people are comfortable just copying and pasting, and it's becoming a lot more readable and a lot easier, perhaps, a lot of these tools than when they were first sort of out in late 2022, but I still say, add your own personal touch to it and your own sort of club's touch to it, just to a little bit. It still saves you heaps of time by using AI in the first place to get there. And, if you're struggling for what photos to attach to it or what sort of things, ask it what photos you should take. So that way, you might already have the photos. It'll give you suggestions of what might be a compelling photo to go with it. And if you don't have it, make sure you take that photo at the event or the next time you have that event. So you've got it in your photo library for next time, and just ask for ideas there to help you and come up with that marketing plan so you can more effectively market yourself as a club. I sort of mentioned member surveys and surveys to the public. If you're not sure what questions to ask it about what questions to ask. And, you might just go with what it gives you. You might add a few of your own because it'll prompt a few things and get some extra information there. The last one I did sort of talk about at the Fit for Purpose program. I don't know if anyone remembers. So grant applications. I did a test with ChatGPT on, I picked 3 grants that I wanted to apply for and literally copied and pasted the answers I got from ChatGPT. I'm not going to publicly out the organizations that they were for in case they somehow comes across their desk and they become more strict on any grants that we put in there. But 2 out of 3, I literally got grants with no changes from what the output from ChatGPT was. The third one, it was the one with the most money, the third one. So that one wasn't successful. So I think the feedback they gave me that the answers were good, but a little too generic. So it can give you a really good starting point, some of the answers, including budgets, including marketing plans, including all the standard questions you get in a grant. So if you're worried about sort of formatting it, it's going to give you that basic architecture that grant applications are generally looking for, because it's trained on what grant applications, those that are reading grant applications, are generally looking for. But you do need to sort of, especially the more money you're asking for, use it as a starting point to save you time in drafting all the answers, but you will have to go through and make it more specific and make sure you are clearly answering the question and giving all the information that is personalized for what you're doing it through. But half the work's done for you because you just need to go in and edit the text that's there, not write the text from scratch.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. And thanks, Ross. And thanks, Di. I'll go over to you in a moment, Hugh. Amanda asked a question about, or mentioned that you can't copy and paste from the chat. Don't worry about that. I'll email out I'll send the copy of the chat out to everyone who registered, so you won't miss out on that. At this stage, over to Hugh Lavery and Geraldton.
Yeah, thanks, Caro, and thanks very much, Hamish. It's good to hear you again. You mentioned the grant situation. The thought that came into my head was we get lots of people applying to our club for grants.
Mm.
What would be great is if they put it through a AI component and completed all the information that we need. Can I ask you have you come across that? Is there something we can prepare that when somebody wants to get some money for us, we say, go to this AI form and fill it in?
So when you say they ask you for money, is this just like the general money letter that everyone, or is this a specific for your club that are applying?
Local club who wants, local men's club wants $5,000 from us. And that's great. But we went through a board meeting the other night and we said, well, hang on, what are we getting for it? That's great. It's sort of, there wasn't enough detail in their application. And we will go back to them and say, hey, we need some more detail. But I was just thinking, if they went through the AI process, we would have it all in front of us.
I mean, there's not specifically a tool that exists for that I know of. But, I think it's a good idea and I think there's potential in it. What you could do is, ask, going back to the Google forms or, Office 365 forms that were mentioned earlier, you could ask ChatGPT to come up with almost your own mini grant application of the stuff that your club wants as information for when someone is asking for money. And then from there, as a follow-up, assuming because that then becomes, that roadblock of who's serious and who's not. And that's a good thing. But then the next step from there is, if they do answer it, you can have a follow-up where you upload that data yourself to see how it answers against your own benchmarks that you've set in AI. So there's still a little bit of manual processing there, but again, as a time-saving tool, there's potential to look at. I think that's a great idea, and it's something that I'm sort of working over in my mind. So I might, roadmap that out. So I'm happy to, take that offline. And if Caro can connect us afterwards, I'll work through that and see if we can come up with a process there, because I think there's a lot of potential there for a lot of clubs in terms. We all get lots and lots of letters from lots of organisations, and I'm sure a lot of them. We're all getting the same letters because they just do a blast across the country, so across the world sometimes. So yeah, leave that with me and I'll come back to you on that one. But yeah, yes, there is a process you could follow. I'm sort of waffling now in terms of how that would work, but let me come back to you. And, if we want to share that through the Facebook group or whatever other platforms as well, I'm happy to share that more widely. Let's just leave that one as a workshop idea for now.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hugh, and thanks, Hamish. A question about member education and development. We have some marvellous offerings in terms of learning about Rotary, but as a general rule, our members are subpar in that department, and it directly affects our retention. How can AI assist in that regard? I suppose this is a deployment question rather than a particular tool.
Look, I guess one of the easiest things you could potentially do there, ask AI about retention and what you should do based on, if you have member survey data, find out where the problems are. But even from the beginning, ask an AI tool to help your club come up with, and I say ask AI, there'll be some generic stuff for all clubs, but ask AI to come up with a retention tool that works specifically, an onboarding tool from the start, because I think a lot of the problem is we're very good at getting people in the door, but again, like you said, they don't stay. So it's coming up with a 12-month, program of onboarding and making sure people are getting what they want out of it, and giving yourself that checklist and coming up with that checklist that what your checkpoints in are. You can automate a lot of this through some of the Google things like that, and have emails sent out at particular time frames when people join, so you don't forget to do it, but also just come up with a physical checklist is a good starting point there, where that can be done to just say, okay, so when someone joins, we need to make sure they have a little bit of a background on the history of Rotary, and the fact that because of the story of Paul Harris and his mates being in their 30s and starting a business networking group that also did good service projects is I tell my peers, I'm 42 now, that Rotary was started by 35-year-olds, and they don't believe me. And that's not meant to be offensive to anyone that's in Rotary, but look at our age demographic in Australia especially, and it's not reflective of the founders. But so give a bit of that history and context, but also obviously it's changed to business and community leaders, and it's not so much like networking is still important, and that community aspect of it is still important, but it's not in that same sort of business sense. But then history of the club, a lot of people they might know what the club does, but they don't necessarily know the history of their own club that they're joining. They don't know all the projects when they get on board, but also a checklist to make sure that team members that might be in charge of particular committees or particular projects are reaching out to that new member, just to keep them informed of what's going on sometimes, not necessarily to get them involved in everything, because you don't want to overwhelm a new member, but just having that sort of help coming up with that checklist so you can get that checklist set up quickly and then use it from there.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. Before we started the webinar this evening, we were talking about challenges going forward, and especially with the Fit for Purpose cohort. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is barriers to AI being taken up in a Rotary Club. Now, the screamingly obvious thing is we've got old members and they'll struggle with it. Jumping over the top of that, because I reckon that we'll do better with that one than most people give us credit for, I'm looking for, I suppose, for the more nuanced sort of the hidden issues that might delay or impede the flow of AI through Rotary. Well, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, there is fear of the unknown for a lot of people, so I'm not going to completely discount that. I was surprised by how many people had said they'd already tried. Pleasantly surprised by how many people had said they'd already tried ChatGPT at the Fit for Purpose. So I think you're right. I think that once people get over that first hurdle and realise that it is just a website, it is just a conversation via text. I mean, now it's upgraded. You can have that conversation via voice. You can literally talk to ChatGPT. You can have it talk back or talk back in transcribe. Excuse me. In transcribed words. So yeah, I think we can jump over that. For those that still have that fear, I would say that's why we start with one small thing and start potentially with the minutes or any of the 5 I mentioned. Pick one, try it, get it embedded down before you try and jump all the way in. The other main things, and I've said it a few times, I'll say it again, we're still at a stage where you can't 100% trust the output of a tool like ChatGPT or even a transcription. They're not perfect yet. So you are going to have to read over it and potentially make a few changes. But I would say that that's worth the effort, given that, the time saved is going to be still significant. After you've gone through your hurdles of trying it, working it out the first couple of times, it doesn't work quite as simply as I made it look like on the screen before, because I've done it 1,000 times before. Like, the time savings long term are worth the effort to get there, even if you are still having to verify some things now. So yeah, don't necessarily trust but verify is how I would sort of describe that. Like, assume that it's 99% certain, but absolutely read through it and read through it carefully just to make sure. The other one that I get a few questions about is privacy of data and potential issues there. And I sort of look at that in two ways. Yes, you have to read the terms and conditions. You should read the terms and conditions of every single document, or every single program you sign up for. Most of us don't, and it becomes a risk. But I sort of challenge that with a tool like ChatGPT is still bound by, the same sort of privacy regulations as every other organization is. But having said that, don't necessarily, upload anything that is highly confidential for your club. You shouldn't be doing that just in case. You shouldn't be doing that anyway. But in the case of meeting minutes, if you're talking about $500, $1,000 here, there for a barbecue or things like that, I would sort of say it's probably not the end of the world if you do put it into ChatGPT. If you do have a real problem with it, you could sort of stop the process earlier. Okay, we'll go back a step. So if you're recording your meetings on Zoom, it's actually in their terms and conditions that they will use your data to train their AI anyway. So if you're talking about something confidential on Zoom, you're already giving up your data to another AI tool that might not be ChatGPT, unless you specifically go in and turn that off. So a lot of people might be doing that already anyway, even if they're concerned about ChatGPT's privacy. Microsoft Office has, it's all connected to the internet, even if you think it's not, and they've got their own AI tool in Copilot. So they're using information potentially to, train their data anyway. But if you have a real concern with ChatGPT, you could still save a significant amount of time by recording a meeting and then uploading it to get transcribed by Microsoft Word, and then from there just summarize the minutes yourself. So you've still saved a significant amount of time and made sure you've got better information than perhaps handwritten notes that you struggle to read later on, or things like that, and then you can still format that into minutes. So, but also I would say that, a lot of clubs send out a newsletter that may have a lot of the information that was from the meeting minutes anyway, and not necessarily 100% sure who's on that newsletter list sometimes, or, they might, that email might get forwarded to someone else, or something gets published on the website. So absolutely, you've got to be careful of the club's privacy, and, members are entitled to privacy in certain situations anyway. But if it's something that is that important, I probably wouldn't be doing it on a recorded meeting via Zoom. You'd be having that meeting face to face anyway.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. Hugh Lavery has another question.
Yeah, look, thanks again, Caro and Hamish. Quick one. In terms of audio quality, clearly, if everybody is on Zoom, that's great. But sometimes you have a bit of a hybrid where there's a few people around a computer on Zoom, and there's others who are on their individual computers. How does the AI chat GPT or Copilot or whatever, how do they deal with variable audio quality? Have you had any experience with that?
It will generally tell you if something is inaudible and they struggle to do that. So, I mean, if you've got a relatively new computer and 3 or 4 people around it, you probably still will hear all of them well enough for the audio recording to pick up on that as well. But, if the recording's not good enough, it's going to have problems for that particular person. Like you said, if you've got 3 or 4 people around the computer and the microphone's crap. So, it's not perfect, and the same thing, if you're recording in a quiet room, you could record your meeting on a smartphone and around a table, and it's going to be fine. But if you were having it over dinner at the local bistro, even if you're in the back corner, if there's background noise because it's a phone and it's not and it hasn't got a noise cancelling microphone or things like that, that's not necessarily saying you need to move your meetings, but you might then need to invest in some better quality audio products, including a better, and that could be as simple as a microphone that you plug into your phone, because there are microphones that do that, which will filter out background noise and focus on those that are closest, because they are smart enough to pick up what noise you actually want to hear and filter out what you don't.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish, and thanks you. Hamish, on behalf of the Rotary community leaders in the room, and I can see a couple of my wonderful colleagues, at least a couple of my wonderful colleagues there, I have a question about, because this community leader thing is a pretty much a brand new concept, and we've got different levels of engagement between clubs, and there's a lot of wet paint around the place. So this is more of a, I suppose, again a combination of things where, and I'll be absolutely selfish and use my case as an example. My clubs are closest one is 100 kilometres from me, and they're typically, significant distances apart, and they're not all that into using technology. But say using any case of who's got say a metro situation or whatever, how could you just say, imagining that situation, how could we use a combination of AI tools to help make a distributed sort of arrangement like that work? Where you've got a community leader supporting clubs which may be very significant distances away, in some cases in other countries.
Look, I guess the issue there is, like you said, depending on, and look, I can use public image as an example. In our own district, I'm in a Metro Melbourne club, and ours goes up to sort of country New South Wales. So, it's not a one size fits all approach. Like, we don't have a local newspaper in Metro Melbourne, so writing a press release is irrelevant for us, whereas a lot of the country towns still do. So that local media coverage is still important. So I guess, where the clubs want to embrace these tools, encourage them, educate them, support them there. But it then comes back to helping your own productivity as a community leader, and that might just be give me some advice on how I should react to a club that doesn't want to embrace technology, and come up with a list and have that conversation, talk about the personalities of the individual members, just to use it as your sort of personal mentor brainstorm, like someone that you're sort of going to vent to and say, I've got this club member here and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. How can I connect with them and convince them to try something? And you may not be able to, but just have a conversation with a tool like ChatGPT and see what ideas that can come up, and give some context to the types of people in there. Obviously, don't necessarily name the club specifically or go into too much detail there, but have a conversation with the tool and see what ideas it can come up for you. Do it there. I'm going to use the typical ChatGPT answer. I don't have, because I get the idea of what you're saying, but I don't have the full context of each individual club there. And what I say to you might not necessarily be the same for the other community leaders, but answering that in terms of have that chat and then see what it comes up with for you is an answer that I think that would work for anyone that's sort of in that situation of struggling with ideas, just to use it as a brainstorming tool.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hamish. Now, I'm noting that we've very nearly used our hour up, and this is one of my favourite questions at this stage. Hamish Jones, why are you in Rotary?
My first Rotary experience actually goes back to when I was in grade 4. So I played the saxophone in my primary school band, and each year there were 2 clubs, North Melbourne and Flemington. So not actually in the district I am now, but very close to where I live, because I haven't moved very far at all, that had Christmas functions, and they invited our primary school band along to play Christmas carols. So first experience of Rotary was just, people in suits having lunch or having breakfast. So we learnt a bit there, and obviously it sort of touched. So I had an idea of what Rotary did. Also, I was aware of Rotary from a young age. I had an idea of what Rotary did. My high school didn't have an interact club, so it's not something I could get involved with there. Coming out of school and into uni, that's sort of something, again, I did a lot of volunteer work, sort of finding my place. For me, it started in 2014. I actually got invited to apply for a group study exchange program. So a friend and client of mine rang me up on a Saturday and said, do you want to do this group study exchange program thing? Gave me a bit of a brief. I'd had the application in by the Sunday, found out a week later I was going. So that was exciting, how quickly that turned around. I spent a month in Germany, so, professional development, so visiting businesses that the Rotarians had organised meetings for, but also visiting a lot of Rotary clubs over there and, learning about this global organisation that is Rotary, and even how different clubs worked over there, because as we all know from our own districts and, with community leaders, the smaller group of clubs that you're dealing with as well, one club's not the same. Some of these were, sort of, you almost had to be elite to the high level CEO type to get in some of these clubs. If you weren't invited, you didn't join. To some that were more I'll call it Australian like, whereas if someone came along in that country town and said, I want to join Rotary, it was like, come in, join us for a wine at dinner, let's talk about our projects and welcome aboard. So, but the deal, just seeing the local projects and stuff they were dealing with and the breadth of the stuff they were working with, what I'd sort of found in my own life was I didn't necessarily have a particular issue I was most passionate about. I know, a lot of my peers and people younger, there's still a lot of volunteering happening, but it's a lot of the time it's single issue cause and things like that. That wasn't something I necessarily was as interested in. So sort of seeing how this was working as Rotary, I'm like, well, this is an organization that I can get involved with, and depending on a whim or depending on the time of day, I can spend some time working on environmental projects, sometimes working on mental health projects, sometimes working, helping out at the local school and giving kids interview practice as they're coming out of school. So all that sort of vocational stuff as well. When I got back, the club that actually sponsored me to go over didn't ask me to join, but a friend of mine, I live in Strathmore, so it makes sense that I did join the Rotary Club of Strathmore. It was a club nearby that sponsored me to go, but a friend of mine had recently joined Strathmore and she said, hey, come along and join. So here I am, and 10 years later, I've been president twice on the district board, and obviously presenting in Sydney at the Fit for Purpose program, and now doing webinars like this at this sort of scale, but also for clubs across our district. And anyone that asks, really, I'm happy to talk about technology. I'm happy to talk about public image, all sorts of things.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hamish. Now, speaking of thank yous, I'd like everyone, please, to switch their microphones on, because I think that Hamish deserves a round of applause. What do you think? Okay, let's go. Well,
Thank you.
So yes, thank you everyone, and we'll be doing more with Hamish and with some other key presenters along the way. So I hope you can join us in future, and thank you for joining us tonight. And good night.
Thank you, everyone.